Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Adams, and I am a training and technical assistant coordinator here at GCAP. That is the Georgia Campaign for Adolescent Power and Potential. And I am super excited to present to you today an interview in our workshop entitled LGBTQ plus Youth Voice and Advocacy in Faith Communities. Listen, today I have some amazing members of our Youth Advisory Council that are going to chime in and talk to us about this topic. Lael, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Can you just give us a quick introduction of yourself, your name, your pronouns, and why you're an expert in answering these questions?
Yeah, of course. My name is Lael, as Jay said. My pronouns are she, her, and I grew up in the church setting. Both my parents worked for the church for a very long time. For my first 10 to 9 years of life, my dad has worked in the church. He's a reverend as well, and he's worked in the church for as long as I could remember. He's still working for them. Uh, so yeah, I identify with the LGBTQ community, so I'd like to say I'm pretty qualified.
How you doing, Morgan?
I'm good. Like Jay said, my name is Morgan Cosby. I usually go by Mo. My pronouns is she, her, and I'm also part of the GCAP advisory board, like Jay mentioned. What makes me an expert in answering these questions? I'm a bisexual, but I also grew up in the faith-based community, specifically the Southern Baptist faith-based community. I grew up in the church. In fact, I was on the praise ministry for 3 years, and I actively participated in my former church until up about 2 years ago. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. Thank you for that awesome introduction, Morgan. We're going to jump right into it. I just have a couple questions. So let's do this. The first one is, what was your interpretation of what it meant to be a part of the LGBTQ plus community?
When thinking about that question, what really comes to mind is just simply a couple of words, which is freedom within unity. What that essentially means is I felt burdened and like I wasn't being completely honest with myself. But I believe God already knew, but I wasn't completely being honest with myself, my peers, and just everybody in general. So when I wouldn't say I necessarily came out, but when I was honest with myself and as well as others, I felt like a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders. I felt like shackles were released and I wasn't bound by that huge secret anymore. So freedom, and then knowing that there's a huge community that supports me, even if I'm not actively in the community, like participating, they still support me. So that's where the unity comes into play.
I love that. Freedom and unity. Amazing words to describe that. Now, can I go off just a little bit and ask you this? What was your experience like inside a faith-based community? You mentioned that you were very active in the church. What was that like, being LGBTQ plus and being involved in the church? What was your experience?
I would say it was both restricting, but also but also I still felt this sense of community because growing up Black in the Southern church, there's always this sense of, it's like a big family gathering every time. But where I felt restricted was not necessarily by my gender, my sexuality expression, but more so by the I don't want to say sexist because everybody has their own interpretations of what's right and what's wrong, but more so I felt like I had to be hidden away. But I also felt togetherness because if you're familiar with the Southern Baptist community, it's like a more praise-oriented branch of Christianity. So having the ministry wasn't just quietness, it was people celebrating, it was people having their come to Jesus moment, falling at the altar and everything. So I felt so encapsulated in that. So I was happy, but I was also struggling and felt burdened. So I had to, that was a huge cluster of emotions.
Basically, my first impression was to not be normal, technically. Just basically not straight and not cisgendered, or not identify with that community, whether that's having no interest in relationships at all or having interest in all genders or whatever it was. That was my first impression. growing up in the faith community, I would say probably my church was pretty accepting. So it wasn't really like, oh, they're all sinners. It's more of just they're different and we still have to love them anyway.
That's amazing because that's something I would think might be strainful. Now, was there anybody, were there people, was it kind of mixed, or was there just an overall acceptance as it went to your church?
Um, I think it was more of just like it just wasn't talked about as much. Like nobody went out of their way. I know some people that I know who aren't in my church but identify as Christians are like, those are sinners. They're bad. Like, but I feel like they still don't go out of their way to judge it. They just find it like sad in a way,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's kind of almost like they pity the people of the LGBTQ community.
And another question. This one is a two-part one. So first part, did you have a trusted adult that you can confide in with your LGBTQ plus identity? And if so, how did they respond to you?
I would say yes. Actually, my maternal grandmother, and I really never felt like I had to come out with her. I would just I wouldn't like even intentionally do it, but I just always felt comfortable with her out of everybody in my family and everybody that I knew. So I would just casually drop things and she wouldn't necessarily react to it, or if she did, it would just be in a positive or like a nonchalant way. And I feel like a lot of people focus on trying to be there for like their kid or their whoever, but they realize sometimes going about your everyday like it's not anything major is sometimes the best reaction. And I feel like my grandmother reacted well, because when I wouldn't say confronted her about why she was so open, but I asked her and she essentially said, because my grandma comes from like the old 40s generation, so I was expecting her to be like,
Right,
but
right.
yeah, but essentially she worked at a cancer home for many years, and she said no matter everybody there, no matter what their background was, they were all united by cancer. They were all struggling with that disease. So all the race, gender, sexuality barriers were gone. So she just like, oh, everybody is struggling. So that's what she said. She made her see that people were just people.
Wow. And that is really amazing to hear, especially as you said, your grandmother, of course, she's older, coming from a different generation. So your expectation was probably one of her shunning you, right?
Yeah.
So she was very accepting. Can you answer me this? Was there an adult that you did not want to confide in with your identity? And if so, why not?
I would say my father, actually, because even though my father, well, I'm not doxing myself when I say this, but I come from like the urban metro Atlanta area. So, and my father actually grew up there, but his family is southern, and he grew up in Madison. Like his mom and dad grew up in Madison, Georgia, which is a more country church-based community. So I knew my dad, even though he grew up in the city and had all these experiences, still held those, I don't want to say old beliefs, but more southern, like old southern beliefs, and he still does to this day. So
I would say yes and no, because of like the fact that I've never really felt the need to like come out officially. I've never really had to like, oh, I feel this way. But there are people where I feel more transparent about like, oh, I think that girl is really pretty or something like that, where I don't feel the need to kind of hide from it, and more just like be more expressive about it. So like instead of just thinking it, sometimes I say it out loud. And it was actually my small group leader. So my church has mentors. They pair high school students and middle school students with mentors. So my church's mentor for me actually responded pretty well. They're like, I love you anyway. That has no change to how I view you. Just like how I said, God told me to love everyone as I would love myself. So I'm going to treat you. And yeah, it was really nice.
Awesome. I have one last question for you. So you've kind of said you never really had the need to, felt the need to come out officially. So was there anything that kind of helped or harmed this ability to fully show up as an LGBTQ plus individual in your faith community?
I think definitely in some areas, like of not, if it was like outside of my church and I'm just talking about to other people who identify as Christians, or identify themselves as religious, I feel more like hesitant to do that, because even though one of God's biggest commands is to love other people, I feel like a lot of people forget that. And I feel like sometimes they end up being hateful towards people in the LGBT community. So for me, it's sort of like a safety thing, because I and like being judged. Like I feel like even though my small group leader accepted me and was like, I don't view you any differently, other people might be like, yeah, I view you differently. So I try to kind of feel out the situation with people who say that they're Christian but who haven't like shown that they love everyone equally as they should.
I feel like since I've been more openly about my sexuality, I've had to sort of cater my own approach. Like I said, I haven't actually been back to church in around a year and a half. So I've had a more individualized approach to my version of Christianity. So because I've been trying to find a balance between, I still like that traditional Southern Baptist church, but not a lot of the traditional Southern Baptist churches like people of my kind that are open about belonging to the LGBT community. So it's just kind of been a struggle to find like a traditional Southern Baptist church, because I don't really want to go to a more modern church that will be open to me, but they don't hold a lot of those like traditional Southern Baptist values. And what I mean by that is they're more like casual about, like they don't dress up in their Sunday's best. They may not have their like the after service where you have like this big gathering where you're just eating food and talking amongst them. May not have such of like the elders speaking to the youth and giving advice. So that's what I've been struggling to find. So I just, been reading my devotionals, reading the Bible, and trying to interpret and just find my own relationship with Jesus and God on my own.
I love that. Let me ask you one more thing following to that. Do you feel like you will, you said you have not been to, like a church in about a year and a half. Do you feel like you will return? Do you feel, yes, I am me and this is who I am, I'm accepted? Or is there a struggle to kind of say, yeah, I want to go back?
I feel like I do eventually want to go back, but what stopped me from going back was like the last time I went to church, it was like a really good sermon. It was after I had just came out to parents. I was still, it was slightly before I came out to my parents. I was really feeling the sermon. I was clapping, I was doing everything because it was a really good sermon. But then a thing that a lot of older pastors tend to go on, or they go like, I don't want to say tangents, but they go like, excuse my language when I say this, but this was the language used, like, damn all the blases, damn all the blases, and they go on a tyrant. And that really like struck me. Like literally when that pastor, that reverend said that, it struck me and I literally fell back into my seat. So it's physically. So I feel like I have a little bit of trauma from that experience, but I do eventually, maybe after college, or because I'm currently in college, that's my dorm room, but like I do plan on going back to the church. I just need to, do some actual research and go to the different churches, which maybe when I bring my car down here, I'll actually have time to explore that. So yeah, it's never been my plan to not go back to church, because it is as much a part of me as it is as my sexuality is.
Wow, what amazing responses from our experts, Morgan and Lael. Thank you both again for being a part of this workshop, and thank everyone for taking the time to check this out. If you would like more information about GCAP, you can follow us online or check us out on our website at www.gcap.org. Thank you for joining us.